site into 560 Wickapog. We closed the public hearing, as everyone will recall, last meeting. And now we have an opportunity for the board to discuss the application based on everything they've heard. So who would like to start? Wow. Don't everyone jump at once. Yeah. Let's, what do we need to move forward on 560 Wickapog?
I would say, I've seen some of the legal documents that Kim kindly provided us, and I think we need to make, I had a bunch of questions about them, and we definitely need to make some progress on those, I think. Because the three I saw all need work. So I think that's something that we need to focus on and get done.
Were there any issues other than, kind of drafting issues?
Well, I thought the agricultural reserve document, the easement, was ambiguous and vague and needed a lot of fine tuning because it made reference to what's permitted by the agricultural code, which would permit, among other things, a cannabis farm, a sheep farm, and a bunch of other stuff. So we need to that needs to be addressed and needs to be refined so that it actually allows them to do what we want them to do.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I have some thoughts. I mean, there was an area that I think both myself and Amanda were, would like to see a view shed. I mean, part of having the ag reserve is so that people could see that there's still a farm. And so therefore, I think, for me, I need to see that.
This is along Fowler Street, correct?
Correct. I mean, currently, there's a very high
Privet.
Mm-hmm. And, I'd like to see that privet, a chunk cut out, so that when you drive down Fowler Street, you can actually see the farm and activity on the farm, because that's part of our heritage.
Yeah. And the area that you're looking to be able to see in is effectively, if we had a site plan in front of us, kind of
Here's a plan.
where the building and cleared area ends, and it's kind of planting area to
Yes.
the entrance of the new access road
Right.
into the development, right? Just that space.
Yes.
We're
Which
talking
is-
about the stretch that we've always been talking
Yeah.
about. That was important 2 years ago to us. It's still important. And while I realize that privet is the current crop, one stretch where people can look through and see privet if it's being farmed, even 20 feet away from that. But we need a view shed in. That was the reason we moved the ag reserve, because we didn't want it to be in the middle of all the buildings, all the new homes. We wanted to see it. We feel like that's what the village code, that's what the people want, and that is the best place, because people go to the beach, they see the deer fencing and the trees and whatever else is on the other side with the other property, and this one as well. If we could have just a little bit of a mirror image of that fencing with some distance, some sight into the ag, whatever it may be, whatever it continues to evolve to be, without having a privet in our face. I think that really, it's really in our face. It's kind of an affront to us, because you know what we wanted. And to say that you're going to see privet on the part that we wanted. I know that's the crop, but we have one stretch that would be able to provide some sort of corridor of ruralness on the way to the beach, and we'd really appreciate it if that could be cleared enough that the farming could take place a little further in and give us an insight into some farmland. That's always been important, and I know it's always been a bone of contention, but we really, really want to be able to say we got something for the village in terms of them seeing farming.
Great, okay. Alan, what's your position on on moving this? What do you need to move forward?
Hey, I have I wait to see the resulting details of an operation for agricultural purposes of the corner, which is partly farming and partly farming operations. And I've spoken about it before. The applicant is gonna do farming. I hope he does it forever, but forever's beyond my time span. But there are 2 other parcels, and this is the pivot for all 3 parcels, and the rest of it pertains to the town, not the village. And I read the law, and I tried to bring a copy, and I didn't make the right copy, but the agricultural law specifically starts by saying it does not apply to villages, which I opined with bad legal research, probably, and that the village is not bound by it, but the village probably is bound by a town agricultural reserve. And there are 2 plots, which are, I believe the applicant is still farming, and I hope they farm for 5 generations. But the buildings run the farming operation in 3 places. There are 4, by my count, there's around 4 agricultural areas left in the village, down from about 12 that I remember in my brief lifetime here. The 4 are left. This is the 2nd largest. It's ultimately will be disappeared because of the power of money coming out to the South Fork, as it has pretty consistently since the Civil War. The village has always been developed a bit more forever. This will be sort of one of the last 2 farms of any size. And the applicant, I understand, will continue to farm it. Hallelujah. But that lease needs to be reviewed in detail in light of the overall farming operation.
Okay.
Another question I have, sort of on Alan's point, if you're finished, because you're talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
in the future,
I'm sorry, I
is
have
that
laryngitis from my
Oh,
too many
no.
grandchildren.
Too
I
many
can hardly
party.
hear myself.
Both of the documents have in them provisions for changes have to be made. And I just scratch my head about it because I'm confused why these decisions wouldn't come back to the planning board. And Southampton Village has always had a long-standing, deliberately structured separation between the Board of Trustees and the land use boards, zoning, planning, architectural review. And it's adopted a government practice rooted in New York Village law, local code, and decades of board policy to remove political influence from discretionary land use decisions. Yet, the Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions, as written, provides that Section 8 of the covenant can be changed by the planning board of the town of Southampton, a different entity, or an authorized representative, or any successive board, or any person or agency over in the village of Southampton who's controlling that. So that strikes me as odd. The second document, the agricultural easement, provides that there can be no changes except by adoption above a local law by a majority +1 of the Board of Trustees. That strikes me as completely against the policy, longstanding, as I mentioned, of this village. Political influence will change our decisions if this is allowed after years of work. We've been doing this for 2 years. Why would that be put in both documents? I contend that it shouldn't be, and I haven't heard any reason why it makes any sense to do that. I'll say finally that the Board of Trustees has done this to, why they've separated is to avoid political pressure, avoid developers lobbying elected officials, preserve independence of the professional decision maker, preserve land use approval from becoming a campaign, reduce conflict of interest, exposure for the trustees. The structure separation is widely viewed as best practice in New York villages. So we care about this case. We've lived with it. We're trying very hard to do what's right for the applicant, the village, and all concerned. Don't take any changes in the future away from us.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what we have. You know, I think from the very beginning, the board's been consistent at a high level were what we were looking for. You know, the site plan with 7 2.5 acre lots, I think is great. The layout, you know, I personally am very happy with. I think we've still got some work to do on the specifics of a maintenance easement agreement, the ag easement agreement. I checked the file just before the meeting, and the landscape plan that is in there is a draft landscape plan, so we have to get, you know, a final landscape plan that we've always talked about for that area between the street and the barn. So we've got to get that, we got to check that box. I personally would like to see that whole issue with the house there on the corner, you know, and we don't want to be put in a position of having to interpret a zoning board decision on that, but, you know, if we could just get that cleared up, you know, that would be helpful for the decision process here. The one question I wanted to ask the applicant was, how would you feel if we were to ask for you to come back to the planning board should you want to demolish any buildings or construct new buildings within the ag reserve?
If I may?
Yeah.
I find questions like that very frustrating because from the very get-go,
Yep.
despite the fact
Hey, John, sorry.
despite the fact there's language in the state law that says that's an impediment to farming, and I want to talk about that.
Yep.
Because I'm ready to talk about these issues. Despite the fact that the state law and the guidelines, which I'm going to hand out to you, say that that's an impediment to agriculture. We have said from the very beginning.
What is that? What is that? You said
That
is
being site plan approval for agricultural buildings. We have said from the very beginning that we would have no problem with coming to this board for any additional buildings, but certainly not for demolition. That's never been asked, but I think that's in the covenants that the CNRs that we saw. So that's always been on the table.
So to build any more buildings, you would come back to a planning board.
Yeah,
You're fine with
I've
that.
been saying
But
that
if
from.
you
I
want to
said
take some
that
down,
a year and a half ago.
It is in the proposed.
It's in the proposed law.
so I think that answers
Yeah.
the question. So if you want to build something new, back to the planning board. If you want to take something down, take it down.
Take it down.
And it doesn't give you the right to build something new on that spot without going
Well,
to
I
the
mean, I could
planning.
rebuild something in kind, sure. I mean, if I was rebuilding something in kind for the same, that's just repair and maintenance.
Yeah, I think we're close
Yeah,
on that.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we don't need to go into much more detail. I know you're armed and ready to go, but we don't need to go into much. Personally, I don't need any more detail than that.
That's not the point.
But I would like the opportunity to actually, and this is going to sound really pompous, and I apologize, but I'd really like the opportunity to educate everybody on what the law is now and what the guidelines is, because some of the things that are being said here on this voluntary agricultural open space parcel, and it is voluntary because we are specifically grandfathered from it, but some of the stuff that's being said here is in total derogation of the right to farm law. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand out these ag guidelines from the state, and I'm going to highlight some of them. If you wanted to.
Would it be impolite of me to ask that you limit your lecture to the board to like 3 minutes or 5
Excuse me?
minutes? Would it be impolite if we could limit your lecture to your education lecture to 3 or so minutes?
I'll do it as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
After the last meeting, I had conversations with council regarding proposed ag easement. Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have taken. My fear is always that I'm going to give out.
Kim, are we putting this in the record? Are we putting this in the record?
Yeah, of course it's going in the record. Alex, another thing I have to educate people on. The public hearing is for the public to speak. It doesn't preclude the applicant from putting additional information in. and your counsel will inform you on that.
Yeah, but if it's significant information, I've got to reopen
It's
the,
different.
No, that is absolutely not
that
true.
is not what our
That is
council
not
is
true.
for. We need to work that out with our
Okay.
That is
council.
simply not
We're
true.
getting different information.
That is false
If you
and,
have,
and,
I'll
a
collect
misapprehension of what
Like-
goes on.
Well,
This is not a zone,
Those are two
Mark, I know this as much as I know that I'm 6 feet tall and 69 years old. This is not a zoning board of appeals hearing where you are constrained to take in only what you take in during the hearing, because it's a quasi-judicial body. That's the record. During the subdivision process, as with the planning, site plan process, there's a public hearing for the public to make comments. After that, there can be whatever exchange, and after that's closed, there can be whatever exchange between the applicant and the planning board that those two parties, in effect, want to talk about. Period.
I will just say that the guidelines for review, I've seen Jeff Bragman has submitted this previously, so this is not something
Yeah.
that's new.
So if I may, I had conversations with council regarding the proposed ag easement, which included certain limiting language specifically as it relates to the use of the farm for animals. 301 of the Ag and Markets Law is standard. It has right to farm aspects, and it is a law, Alan, if you're going to tell me that it doesn't apply in the village, you're going to have to show me where, because I know, as sure as I'm sitting here, it's a law of general application in the state of New York. So we had agreed to certain language that is more restrictive of 301 of the Ag and Markets Law. We conceded that there would only be compost for the use of this property, and the property is controlled by the related entities, despite the fact the Ag and Markets Law allows commercial, and what some people think is commercial composting, but it is part of agriculture. We also conceded to restrict any new housing for agricultural labor, number one. And number two, I have been very clear since the issue was raised that I would go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals for them to look at that language. As I said at the last meeting, I was very clear I wouldn't ask the planning board to interpret a Zoning Board of Appeals decision. So we'll go back there. That's fine.
I'm just
That's fine.
providing, I'm just
No,
providing.
but I
a
had said this
checklist- a
before, the
checklist.
same way with the site plan. I had said it before. I've been saying it consistently. We have conceded that any construction of any new buildings on the property would be subject to site plan approval of the board. Because these guidelines say that that's an inappropriate impediment of agriculture. We cannot agree to any further restrictions. We've been extremely accommodative on this.
Sorry, we cannot, or you will not?
I will not,
Okay.
but I don't think you can. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, the law may change. It's one thing to change to have something in a covenant that stays intact. It's another thing, and it's important as that relates to a change in the law. There may be changes based upon other laws or laws that are repealed or voided due to court action, and it's improper to draft or require a covenant that restricts the farmer's rights in those eventualities. This imposes an additional improper burden for the farmers to be able to take advantage of a change in the law. I shouldn't have to go back and ask for a majority plus one to amend the CNR if there's been a change in the village code that would allow something, or through court action, these restrictions in the village code have been found to be contrary to the state law. And that's a very, very important thing. I handed up the guidelines, and they provide a list of questions that a municipality is supposed to consider before taking any steps that affect farming applications. Do the regulations materially limit the definition of a farm operation, farm or agriculture in any way that conflicts with the definition in Section 301? If yes, the regulation is in violation of the Ag and Markets Law. Are certain classes of agriculture subject to more intensive reviews or permitting requirements than others? For example, is animal agriculture treated differently than crop production without demonstrated links to a specific and meaningful public health or safety standard designed to address a real and tangible threat? If yes, the law or the regulation is in violation of the Ag and Markets Law. Are any classes of ag activities meeting the definition of farm operations subject to a special permit, site plan review, or other jurisdiction? Yes, if yes, the regulation is in violation of the Ag and Markets Law. Now, we've conceded that, even though it's the same thing that I'm not getting any benefit from these substantial concessions we've made, let alone the 12 lots to 7 lots and the agricultural reserve that we don't have to do. But I've said from the get-go that we don't have to provide access to the water. We've provided access to the water. I've said from the get-go we don't have to submit to site plan approval. But we're willing to do that because we're trying to get some sort of compromise here. But there's nothing coming back. So the line is drawn now. We're not going to agree to anything other than Ag and Markets Law restrictions other than agree to go back for site plan approval, not to do any sort of commercial composting and not have any new ag labor. And having said that,
Ag labor housing.
ag labor housing. Having said that, we will go back and get finality, not from this board, but from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And, we'll see what happens there. The Ag and Market Law protects the on-farm production, preparation, and marketing of livestock. It was amended to include commercial horse boarding operations in definition of the farm operation. I fought this battle 30 years ago, all the way up to the appellate division, when Tony Tisker's farm wanted to have polo matches there, and the town, despite specific assurances that they had given to the Tisker family, tried to stop it. And we had to go to the appellate division, and they said, of course that's part of the Ag and Markets Law. Of course that's part of.
Is that Equus, John?
That's
Is
the
that
Equus case. You're
case?
well aware of that. Now, and something that, and I urge you to have your counsel or you talk directly to John Halsey of the Peconic Land Trust. The opposition brought up the fact that they were going to try to lobby people to have some of this subdivision preserved or bought. We're not at all interested in talking about that until maybe after the final conditional approval, for obvious reasons, because it has valuation reasons. But I will tell you, and I urge you to call John Halsey, what happens is the PLT of the Peconic Land Trust goes in, they zero in on properties, and sometimes they acquire it first with an understanding that the town will acquire it. But in all instances, you can't have, if they're going to acquire it, it's going to be melded into the open space. You cannot have, they will not acquire properties that have covenants that are more restrictive than their covenants, and their covenants talk about 301 in the Ag and Markets Law. Don't take my word for that. Call up John Halsey and ask him. And I know what he's going to say to you, because I've been dealing with that issue with him since I was the town lawyer over 30 years ago. That's what he's going to tell you. So, and I know it sounds pompous, but I've been doing this a long time, so I am trying to educate you about certain of the things that you're saying that have triggers and trips.
Can I ask you a
on
question?
them.
One thing?
Yes,
Just
if I may, Mr. Bond.
you're educating me. So, because the ag law preempts all their law, is the case that if a village ordinance or somebody could put a pig farm in that space if they wanted to, and that would be required by the ag law, if they wanted to do it, they could do it?
I'm sorry, say again.
Are you saying the ag law preempts any kind of regulation, such that if somebody wanted to put, for example, a pig farm in that space, they could do it?
A pig farm?
Any kind of farm, any kind of raise animals of any kind.
Yeah,
Pigs.
I mean, the Ag and Markets Law is very, very, very broad.
But to be clear, that preempts any other law, any other restriction law that would try to restrict that.
As long as the regulation bears some relation to health and safety. So, for example, in your example, if you wanted to make sure that the manure storage was in some place, or that we're providing some sort of health and safety issue as a result of the locus of the pigs, that would probably be a reasonable regulation.
So it's not a carte blanche, but there's some.
It's not a carte blanche.
Right.
It doesn't say you can't regulate
I'm just asking what you're
farming
saying.
at all.
I understand. I'm asking what you're saying. That's all.
No.
Because that's sort of what you're implying. But I'm just
No,
asking
I
what
wasn't
you're saying.
implying that. I was very specific.
Well, wait a minute. I want to be crystal clear on that. You're saying you can regulate it to the extent it's a health and safety issue, but beyond that, you cannot.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, actually, to a certain degree, yes, because the zoning powers of a village under both the village law and the municipal home law. That's home rule law. That's what they come from. The public health and welfare, safety and welfare.
And you agree?
I'll give you a little just background on our conversation. He was not happy about the ag reserve draft that I submitted, because in his words, it did not encompass all of the uses that he believes the property is entitled to under 301 under the agricultural markets, such as livestock, what were the other? It was livestock, animal husbandry.
Composting is specifically allowed. You said, can
Yeah.
we come
Yes.
to some terms with that?
So that's how this was all
Site
raised.
plan,
I can
we're
tell
gonna
you
re-
from the litigation on agricultural markets law, if the municipality is going to adopt a local law, a rule, regulation that's contrary to ags and markets law, the burden shifts on the municipality to prove that you adopted it pursuant to a health and safety welfare regulation. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's probably a more accurate and more complete way of saying it. But these are very, very important things. And let's talk about this view shed.
Sorry, John.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I just want to make sure we have a tight grip on that health and safety issue. So at what point, since the burden of proof shifts to the village, at what point does the village exercise that option? Is it in the ag agreement? Is it in
This is
this
the legislation.
stage, or is it after you've already put a pig farm there that's polluting? Not bad example, but hypothetically, you put a pig farm that's right next to a pond, and the runoff is ruining the pond. You know, that would be a health and
Well,
safety
it couldn't
issue.
happen in this situation because
No,
we have a
I'm not talking about this
150-foot
situation.
buffer.
There's a
Yeah.
hypothetical.
hypothetical.
Well, it happens when you enact the regulation or the law, or, I guess, in his argument, his argument is the agreement is not consistent with ags and markets law. It's contrary, you're not including all the uses that we are entitled to. So I guess that the point is, this agricultural easement has to be negotiated, right? It's signed by both parties. It's signed by the village, and it's signed by his client. His client won't sign it if it doesn't encompass what he believes should be encompassed, and then litigation would ensue. And we would have to show a justification for our position on the agricultural easement, why we don't want to encompass all of the uses that are permitted under ags and markets law.
So maybe I misunderstood, but that didn't answer the question. Is the appropriate time to carve out, if you will, a health and safety caveat in the ag easement now, or how does the village, if you believe that, and I'm not worried, hypothetical, generation from now, somebody has this property and wants to put a pig farm there, and the village believes that it causes health and safety, what is the mechanism that the village can there move forward to prevent that pig farm
Pass a
from?
local law.
That's your only avenue, is to pass a local law saying pig farms are now are not allowed in the
I
village,
don't know
but
if you can
according
say
to
that they're illegal, but if you want to regulate them, so with the example he gave a little while ago was that the manure pile wasn't placed by residential properties, you're allowed to do things, you're allowed to ask for conditions that have to do with the health and safety and welfare of the residents.
But that seems to fly in the face of New York ag and markets law, which would say, you know, pig farm's good anywhere.
No, you said the conditions have to be reasonable. It's like in response to Mr. Dye's question, it's not a carte blanche. You don't get to do whatever the hell you want to do. If the municipality can show that there's a reasonable relationship between the regulation, it just can't be overly broad or burdensome.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do here, is put a finer point on
So
carte
if there
blanche.
are certain uses that you're concerned about, I think you
Well,
should
let me
discuss
talk to you
them.
if I can about the, because this
Before
rolls
you go-
right into it.
Before you go on, because I don't think the board is interested, I'm not gonna speak for the board, I'll speak for myself. I don't think I'm interested at all in limiting the applicant's ability, the avenue to sell some of this property to Peconic Land Trust or CPF, right? So,
You're gonna do that if you have a more restrictive easement on there. And don't take my word for it.
yeah,
Call John
no,
Holmesy. Please
I
do.
get that. But in your experience, Kim, or your experience, or anyone's experience here, what have CPF and Peconic Land Trust agreed to in the past, because they've done this many, many
I
times?
can tell you what it says. It says the Peconic Land Trust, remember, their whole raison d'etre, I always
Yeah.
stumble over that word because I don't speak French, but their whole reason for existing is for the very broad allowing of farming. So
Yeah.
it's 3-in-1 in the Ag and Markets Law. Candidly, I'll just disclose it. I'm going to tell you, you should call John. I said, they're trying to do stuff to this ag agreement that's contrary to any PTL easements I've seen, and I know you guys negotiate with the town. And he said, they better be careful because the thing's not going to be saleable for open space if it's a more restrictive easement.
And-
I-
and
In
that is
answer to your
not-
question.
Excuse me?
I have
That's not the
never,
intention.
It's not
Not the intention. It's not my intention.
what it would be the effect of it.
Right.
I have
we
never
have them come
seen
in
a
and talk to us about it?
The
Do we have them
Peconic
come in?
Land Trust agricultural easement restrict what's in agriculture and markets 301.
Say
So
that
they all
again,
say-
Kim? Say
I
that.
have never seen the Peconic Land Trust in any of their agricultural easements restrict the uses that are permitted in agricultural and markets law.
That's right.
Let me talk, if I may, about this
Yeah.
view shed, okay?
It doesn't apply.
Which view shed now?
This- the
Fowler
proposed
Street or
view shed along-
between
Well, I don't-
Wickapog and the barns?
Even though you're gonna see that I think that buffer, which has been, I have copies of it, which has been in the file since March, that's another thing that's somewhat frustrating. Been in the file since March. Even though I think that's a legal imposition, we're agreeing to it, because again, we're trying to accommodate and everything. I'm talking about along Fowler Street.
Yeah.
Remember, the ag reserve stops about halfway.
Yep.
These are residential lots.
Right.
So you're not doing anything with these. So the ag reserve stops about
Wait,
about
can you say that
halfway.
again, John? I'm sorry. Say that again, what you were saying?
The ag reserve
want
travels
to put it
about
on the,
halfway down the north-south.
Put it
You
on.
can put it on the camera. That would help a little bit if you can. So you can point.
Hey, John,
I need a
there's
mic,
no
though.
microphone there, so you gotta leave it there and speak into the
Let
microphone.
me talk to you about these New York State guidelines affecting, because requirements for buffers, for screening, or setbacks, for fences or otherwise, for agricultural purpose are concluded by the department to be unreasonably restrictive. Buffers and associated setbacks would require farmers to remove land from production or otherwise remove land from the use of the farm operation. The impact on nursery greenhouse operations is especially significant since they're often conducted on smaller parcels of land. Maintenance of these sorts of items creates a hardship on the landowner.
What page are you on, John? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I underlined it. I'll get it to you.
What page of this are you reading from?
I'm sorry. I think I gave you the underlined portions,
Oh,
but I will make sure that I.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
C, setbacks.
So despite the state guidelines stating that the establishment of a buffer is unreasonable, we did agree to install at considerable expense a substantial vegetative buffer along the northerly property line. We are opposed to and have no interest in a view shed along the easterly side of the property. This is not feasible. As Ricky presented at prior hearings, there's significant wind drift across this property. The property is hedged along Fowler Street to prevent soil drift and damage to nursery stock. Again, it's a voluntary ag reserve, and the guidelines say you can't require those things. This is something that as a local boy, I get it. These ag reserves are not open space parcels. They're working farms. It's not you come out here, you drive in your BMW, oh, isn't that wonderful open space? I'm so lucky I can live out here in the country. This is a working farm. It's a working farm. And the idea is not to present, despite what Mr. Bragman says, It's not to present anything other than the opportunity to maintain the farm. So to the extent that you want me to pare back on valuable product in that ground, the state guidelines say that's illegal, that's inappropriate.
How are you paring back? I mean, I think all they're asking for is to lower the privet like the Halseys did kitty corner.
I'm not going to
They're
lower
on
the
corner.
privet. It's in.
To prevent wind.
Yeah.
Slows the topsoil weight, ruins the quality of the land.
Sorry.
That's a
Should
history
they be
of hedges.
introduced themselves?
Dust control, that's what the history of hedges are.
Well, we're just talking about a strip. We just want to
No,
see
it doesn't-
into the
it doesn't matter. It
operation.
doesn't matter, it's like opening up.
Sorry.
Well, but there's-
No,
there's
please talk,
nothing
but you
on
just
there.
have
Come
to,
on,
you just have
come
to
on,
come
Mark.
up to the microphone, that's all.
Identify yourself, Mark, please.
Mark Epley, father-in-law of the applicant, okay?
Also the former mayor of the village of
We know.
Southampton and
We
is
know.
intimately involved in land use for 20 years.
So, the history of hedges, the real reason why the hedges, I mean, his father used to get people calling me all the time, complaining about the hedges, because he had the hedges up to control the dust. That's what it is. It's valuable farmland. It's good quality soil that you can plant and grow anything on. You know how hard all that land down by the ocean right there was all horrible soil. It took generations to improve the quality of that soil, to be able to grow anything on it. That's very valuable. It's very valuable. To put up the hedges to prevent that wind from coming through. You see a nor'easter come through, here you'll blow most of the dust off there. That's what it
Because
is.
it takes arable farmland out of production.
That's
The
the
moment-
part,
the
that's
moment
the part
you-
I don't
All
understand.
right, so
The
someone's got to
moment-
tell me what,
Well,
someone's
the
gotta
moment-
tell me what
yeah.
you want, how you see this. Because privet grows to a certain height. You don't just take them out of the ground when they're this height. You have all different markets for some. The planning board in certain times wants to see 12-foot privet.
But
as
we're,
a condition.
if I may, we're talking about a relatively small area, and across the street, there's dust, there's trees, it's just a small area. You know what we want. We
No, I
want,
don't
we
know.
want
I have
people.
no
You're not
We
comparing
do
apples to
want-
apples. Across the street is not privet.
I know,
That's
it's
completely
not
different
privet.
crops.
Right.
All right. So it's different. The privet gets salt damage, it gets wind damage. That's what's being grown on the village side. So that's why the privet is along the road to block the wind. It's a different crop across the street.
Just say your name for the record, I'm sorry.
I'm Rick Fowler. I'm the
Privet.
applicant. Yes. Okay. So I know how to farm.
Maybe you
I'm a
could help
farmer,
us. Could you help
and
us
that's
to-
why
yeah,
it's
no.
there. And I'm telling you, that's why it's there. It's
We
not there
underst-
for a view. It's not there to block a view. It's there for dust control. It's there for wind protection. It's there to help the salt air that blows from the ocean to protect the crops that are grown there.
Well, perhaps we could have smaller openings and several, and you could see it, and you could plant
But
that.
that's not blocking the wind
But
and
a
the dust
part
and
of
the air.
privet could be
Whether it's small
perpendicular to
openings
the
or
view
not,
shed.
or shorter, you need that to block the wind.
Look at the Halsey farm on
That's-
Scuttle Hole Road. You drive by there, where the farm stand is.
Yeah.
You see what's wrapped in?
What I'm having a hard time
It's
is
privet hedge. Tall, mature, high privet.
there was concern over
There-
this ag reserve and what happens if, we're not there to farm it. I'm up
believe-
here for 3 years fighting to farm. I should just sell it all at this point and make residential houses. I'm fighting to farm. And it's been 3 years of this. And just for a view shed, we're giving you a $200,000 view shed right at the corner like you asked for. I don't have to do that. I'm taking that ag land out of production to give you a view. Now you want more of a view to damage potentially crops that are being grown there. You're over asking, and we're not willing to do that. We're giving you so much, and I should not have to fight to farm.
And I think what you're hearing is the only one, is the only true and real evidence of what these farm concerns really are. We wouldn't be fighting this if they weren't real.
And as far as the ag easement, I don't know how farming is going to change. It's harder and harder to farm. Crops are changing. What the next hot thing is, we'd still be growing potatoes. You could have put a covenant that we can only grow potatoes. If that was the case, we'd be done. Nothing. Potatoes are not a marketable crop now. We have to have the ability to adapt and change. And that's the whole purpose of Ag and Markets 301. The state is protecting the farmers so they can adapt and be economical and support the communities and society. So that's why we need the ability to adapt over time. All right, I don't know what the next cash crop's going to be. If you look, you know, you mentioned Mr. Dye cannabis. 15 years ago, did you think that would have been a crop that was going to be prevalent out here? I didn't think that. But look at it now. So we don't know how things are going to change. You know, we've used the analogy about goat's milk. Who knows if maybe the studies show that that's curing cancer in 20 years. We need that ability to change, and overburdening and restricting this is not going to help us, and it's going to prevent us. So, thank you.
And that's the real practical evidence.
Yeah, no, and look, I appreciate, I like to learn and be educated on these things and understand the underlying issues. I think what I'm a little, and I get the whole wind drift and the dust being washed away, but the prevailing wind out here is out of the southwest. That's off the ocean, right? And I know a northeaster is going to, you know, that privet would help, but northeaster is a wintertime thing. Privet loses its leaves in the
What are
wintertime.
you talking about?
I'm not
though?
sure. I don't. Here's
No,
the,
no, no. What are you talking about? I don't
I'm not
I can't
sure
even
I-
envision what you're
I
talking about.
understand.
Somebody should take a pencil and
Yeah,
draw what you're talking
look,
about.
I-
have no idea what you're talking
All right. Most of the time, the wind comes.
about. No. Where do you want this view shed?
I'm not asking for a view shed. I'm just trying to understand the issues here. Okay, right? I just really want to understand, right? There are 2 board members that are very interested in a view shed along Fowler Street, right? I'll leave it at that, but I do want to understand the issue, right? So in the summertime, the wind comes across Phillips Pond, blows across where you're growing the privet, generally speaking, right? I get the,
Direction changes. I can't
yeah, no,
predict that.
yeah, let me land.
Well-
Northeaster would come from the opposite direction, from your town property into the privet area, right? But in the wintertime, there are no leaves on privet. It's, you know, it's just branches.
Damaged. I mean, a lot of
So I don't understand how that's actually stopping the dust or the,
Let me ask you this: drive around the village, drive down Meadow Lane. In a couple weeks, look at every privet. It's all covered in burlap. Tell me it doesn't get wind damage.
Yeah,
Why are
that's
they covering Why is everybody covering their
to
privet?
protect it
burlap.
from wind damage.
Right.
Yeah.
So
No, I get that
That's-
the wind,
that's exact-
I get that, but what I don't understand is how that privet along Fowler Street there actually, I want to understand, right?
right.
You're
it's
the
still
expert.
entwined,
I'm
and
not.
it's still
right?
entwined, and it's blocking the wind. It's doing dust control, wind control.
So it does actually work.
Yeah, it doesn't.
right?
It doesn't.
Wintertime,
it's not a
summertime,
deciduous tree.
it helps. And you don't cover that with burlap in the
We
wintertime.
do not, and the crops that are grown inside are immature.
Yep.
Right, they're short. That's what needs to be protected by the
Understood.
wind.
Yeah.
Right, and we're not going to burlap. It's unfeasible and unrealistic to go and cover every plant in the ground, with burlap.
Yeah,
I think
I
what-
understand, and now I understand why you don't do it on the other side, because you're not growing privet over there, and it's not as sensitive a crop. So I
Correct.
appreciate the explanation. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand.
And the other thing is privet. If privet is maintained, you pretty much butcher it every once in a while because it's a weed. And what happens is it grows back in an extremely dense manner, and even without leaves, it's a significant buffer. I'm not going to say the privet is the same as the privet to end all privet, which is Charlie Bellows' privet on the corner of Little Plains and Gin,
Yeah.
which is like that.
Yeah.
But even
That's-
without
That's
the leaves,
from the
it's
Privet
amazing.
Museum.
It's
Yes.
the Privet
Right,
Museum.
edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But even without the leaves, it's a significant buffer.
But my question is, you're not always going to do privet. I understand it's privet now, but can you think of a way that there's a compromise, perhaps that there are sections that could be closed off in inclement weather, doors, whatnot, so that people could have a view into the farmland without compromising your wind, with your dust?
I gave you a compromise that's right up front, right on the corner. That's the compromise. I'm taking agricultural land out of production to give you a view.
This that Mark likes this so much. This is a landscape plan. To me, this is not farming. This is not of interest to me. This is not my
This is what the
thing.
board is
That's what the board
But they
asked.
wanted a landscape plan to pretty that up. That's not farming. I'm trying to
Yeah,
make sure
that,
the
we're not
village
talking about the
grows.
same thing. You want it on the road.
I want on the Fowler side a window
Right.
into farming. I want a view. It doesn't have to be the whole way. It doesn't even. I don't want to ruin any crops,
And
whatever.
I'm saying,
but we'd like
that's what we gave you. We gave you that view shed. That was what you guys asked for
There
initially.
is no view shed.
Where are you
You
talking
asked
about on Fowler?
specifically to be able to see the barns and to have a nice view and entrance and
Are you talking
landscape.
about Wickapog now? Because
Yes,
we
we're talking
wanted
about
Fowler.
Wickapog. That's
We've
what we
always
gave
wanted
you.
Fowler.
That was an
Wickapog
agriculture
was
field.
Mark wanting to pretty that up for some reason. That's not farming. You know,
That's
that's
a
we're gonna
farm
see-
field that we're taking out of production to plant.
Maybe we should talk about it.
at the
because
board's
that's
request.
Well, maybe
not-
we
that-
should talk
yeah, we should,
about
because
that.
that's not to us farming, and I would think you would agree.
That's what the board
That's not
has
what
asked
he
us
wanted.
for.
He was actually at the beginning wanting fewer driveways, and he wanted it to be pretty.
We're
That
not
was
willing to have
never
a view shed
what
in there.
we.
We're just not willing to do it. We should just
And
take
it's
off.
unfeasible along Fowler Street, and that's where we'll leave it.
Yeah.
And if we need an interpretation from Ag and Markets, we'll happily go from them. I bet you they'll tell you the same thing.
It's in there.
You couldn't put like a doorway periodically down so that somebody could look in?
Who?
Something like that, not a doorway, but a window into it,
Why are
just
we
anything.
concerned
Because
about
we
this?
wanted to see, we wanted to see farmland.
We gave you access to the pond. We've done, this is, yeah, it's private property. So, no, this is not an open space, this is an
Wanted to say
agricultural
something.
easement.
I think you,
We're
why don't you
trying to
clarify?
fight to farm. We're trying to protect the crops. We don't know what the crops are gonna be.
Right,
This is what we need to do, and we're telling you this is what we need to do. And the Ag and Markets tells you, farms need screenings, farms need this protection. So
well, what
why
would
are
you
we
do if you
arguing
were back
against
to
it?
potatoes, or you were out to cannabis next time, or whatever? Would that require the same level of coverage?
I don't know, I'm not into potatoes or cannabis, so I
I'm
don't know
just
what
saying,
that
we have
requires right now.
we're trying to look way in the future.
So,
We're not willing to
I'm
offer
not
any
doing
sort of view shed.
hypotheticals, yeah.
We're not willing to offer any view shed then. You should just make your decision. I think it's totally contrary to the purposes for the preservation of
That's not
farm,
farmland.
agricultural
You get your
farmland,
farmland,
which
you're-
again, I'm going to say for the 15th time is voluntary in this instance. Specific grandfathering of this language. Think about what's going on here. There's a 12-lot yield. We're doing 7 lots with significant buffers. You're welcome.
Thank you, John. You guys had a question for me?
Well, this does not look like, this is from an aerial view. Is that correct?
That's been in
And
the
then
file
it's
since
been
March.
superimposed. I haven't been here for that long, so
Okay.
I don't know. But this appears to be an aerial view, and it doesn't appear that prior to the superimposition of these plantings, or a drawing of the plantings, that there was any farming
Yeah, there was
going
Can-
on here.
Can I answer that?
And
Hang
and
on.
it's not
Let me,
in the agricultural district.
let me
So what?
clarify that. Like,
So
can I
what?
ch-
Excuse
me.
That's a red herring.
So
It's not in the ag district. That's a red
area
herring.
between, and this was part of the
And the barns.
negotiation from very early on. The area between Wickapog, that in front of the barn, is actually farmland, and the Fowlers have been growing stuff in both that area and the area on this side of that driveway.
Yeah, this I
That
can
area
see
too,
as
and
being
there have
farmed.
been
It doesn't look like
there have been
anything
things
there.
planted there, and on the original site plan, that shows, I forget what it's referred to on the site plan, but it's, it's farm
that is
soil. Yeah.
farmland, that is a farm field. So we started
Well,
this
if
3
you
years ago,
took-
and we have to rest fields
No, I
in
know.
between crops. So when we started this, knowing that the board was gonna require us to do a whole planting plan there, we've decided to hold off planting that area. So we didn't have to rip it all up to then go and plant this, vista that the board has asked us for.
I would rather see farming there than, flowers
We're
or
not there.
anything.
But we literally have spent so much money on designing and redesigning and coming back, and this is what the board has directed us to do.
Yeah.
And this was at the request that they wanted to see this.
Yeah.
We each had issues. I had the view shed on Fowler, he had the plantings and the driveways and all that. Everybody had different, things we were talking about, so.
Yeah, so Hannah, just to kind of, because I know this application's been going on a long, long time, and very early on as part of the evolution of the site plan, is it 12 lots, is it 7 lots, what's it gonna look like, how's it, the negotiation, if you will, evolved to what we have today, which is that area as you are going along Wickapog. Let's make that look as nice as we can, and the Fowlers, as part of that negotiation, graciously said, all right, yeah, we can clean that up, landscape it, and that's where the overwhelming majority of traffic, right, it is. Not that many people go down Fowler Street. So, you're getting the biggest bang for the buck by landscaping that area. And that was a give very early on in the negotiation. So I think by changing the board's direction on that would be, in my view, a significant retrade that, would not be good. So I think that ship has sailed, is the point on that one.
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I've said this to people. When this application first came in, we were trying to decide what to file. 12 lots. We said, okay, we'll reduce the density by at least 2. We came in 10. There was some pushback on that. We met with a lot of brokers, and the 10 lot would still, when these things came out of agricultural production, would still yield significantly more than the 7. I feel a little bit foolish in a way. I turned to the Fowler family and said, based upon my experience, you go right down to 7 instead of 12 to 10 to 7. This will fly through, because there's no board that could say anything other than thank you for that. So the fact, in my experience of doing this for an awfully long time, I've had subdivisions where we had a 70 lot yield, then we went down to 50, and the board went out of their way to thank us, even though there was 50. This is, in the town. I've had subdivisions where there's a 5 lot yield, we went to 3. The board was nothing but thankful. Immediate negative declaration. This is the sort of, to the extent that when somebody comes in, and this is important, in any sort of application, to this extent when somebody comes in with a very accommodative plan, ab initio, as we like to say, and you don't reward them, it chills other people from being reasonable in the future. It's something that you really have to think of, because we have been extremely accommodative. We didn't think that there was any legal, and I still don't think any legal means for getting access to the pond. We've conceded that. We are, as your counsel said the last time, it's the first time she's seen buffers on lots put right into the covenants as opposed to being imposed on the building permit. Usually when you go in for a building permit, I'll give you a great example. The subdivision that Mr. Bragman owns, Mr. Bragman's family, Mr. Bragman's client, owns the waterfront lot. That was a lot that a client of mine, Lifton and Green, developed. He put the house back 150 feet, and in the village of Southampton, if you put the house back 150 feet, you don't have to give a buffer, because you're totally outside of the jurisdiction. It's not like the town, where in the town, if you're in 200 feet, Marty Shea is going to grab a 125-foot buffer out of it. In the village of Southampton, since the village of Southampton wetlands law was enacted in 1989, if I go in, I have the village mark the wetlands, and I put the house back 150 feet, I don't have to do any buffer. If I put the house 150 feet and the septic 200 feet, I don't have to do any buffer, which is why Mr. Bragman's client is the same guy who's complaining about we should have more significant buffers on this piece of property. He has a 30-foot buffer on the property. You want to know how that happened? We went in to subdivide the lot in the front, the non-waterfront lot on that 2-lot subdivision of which Mr. Bragman's client owns the waterfront lot. And the village said, the subdivision, can you give us some buffer here? Even though we were subdividing it to create a lot on the street. So we gave him a 30-foot buffer. So the give-backs on this application have been so enormous.
So you brought it up.
Sure.
So, define buffer, because when I look at the site plan for that property that you're referring, the waterfront lot, there's nothing between the edge of the pool and the pond, which is 150 feet.
He could plant
whatever he wants.
Svider could plant, he could come back 30 feet from the wetlands,
Yep.
and I know because I drafted the covenant.
Yep.
He could plant 30 feet, he could come back, have a surveyor come out and mark off 30 feet back from the wetlands, and then plant everything else to his property, to his improvements with lawn.
Got it. Okay.
What'll happen here? 125 feet native plantings,
Yeah.
the next 25 feet lawn, 150 feet the house, 200 feet the wastewater system, right in the covenants that we're granting.
No, so in your example, the septic has to be 200 feet
200
back
feet.
from the edge of the pond, not the buffer.
No, 200 feet from the edge of from the wetlands.
Yeah.
From the wetlands.
From the,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
which is,
Well, in this particular instance, it's pretty much the edge of the pond because it's been traditionally
Well,
farmed
so
right
the
up to
only
it.
diff-
But you can have you could have wetlands that's 7,500 feet
Yeah.
from standing water.
yeah, I
Yeah.
get that. So the only difference is, this has to be native plantings from wetlands edge,
125 feet back.
Yes.
125, versus next door to the south, 30 feet.
30 feet
And
native
you
plantings.
can plant
the
anything.
rest is
You can
lawn.
plant
Rest is lawn.
privet.
You can plant privet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to do that because he's going to block his view to the pond,
Yeah,
which
no,
is really
it's-
what his opposition is about.
Yep. Okay. Lecture over. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. to me.
Appreciate the education. Look, I'm all about checklists here, and I think that a couple of us here feel very strongly, right, about this one issue. I think all the other issues we're pretty darn close on. We've still got to go through the maintenance easement and the ag easement, and that negotiation will
Okay.
continue on that. But
But I wanted you. I wanted you to hear what our
yeah,
position
I
was. on
appreciate that, and and then we ought to have something in there that's not a draft, right, for the landscape plan, right? Just take draft off. What's the only thing in the file now is stamped draft.
We'll just take the draft stamp off.
Fine, just so it's not stamped draft.
We'll just take the draft.
Okay.
Here, can you have an extra copy? I'll send this back to.
How familiar are you, Mr. Bennett, with the Peconic Land Trust Topping Farm easement language?
The Peconic Land Trust.
When
Topping.
when CPF bought the Topping Farm,
That was a
because
bit of a negotiation.
Yeah.
That easement. Yeah.
because my understanding is that that's not your typical wide open New York ag and markets type
No,
easement.
if anything, I think the Topping Farm got more.
I mean, it was an ag easement, it was
I think it was a
something
little
like a
bit broader.
247.
Because it was such a significant piece. I'll ask John. Well, I got a copy of it from John.
I,
Was that a
think we
247 though,
have it.
topping?
Excuse me.
Was that
I think.
open space as opposed to ag?
I think it was a land trust. Let me find. I'll find out.
that was CPF,
Yeah.
right? But are
Well,
those,
here's what happens, and people don't know this. The land trust can act more quickly than the town, because the town is glacial when it
Yeah,
comes
but
to
the-
buying open space, even though they have all
but the
this
town
money.
has a bigger checkbook.
So what happens, even though they have a much bigger checkbook. So what happens is sometimes there'll be an agreement with the town.
Yeah.
You go in, you buy that.
Yeah.
The land trust buys it, and then they sell it to the
Are
town.
those easement agreements typically public documents?
Oh yeah, they're filed.
So
Yeah.
I've been asking for those, that
think
one
we have
specifically for a year,
You
and I have not gotten it. I would really appreciate someone getting
find it. I'll
that to
call
the board.
John tomorrow. You want to
Right.
we'll get on the phone and call John tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that was sort of sui generis, that one, I remember.
Yep.
Because there might have been some stuff on the farm that wasn't typical.
All right.
I think it was Patsy Topping, not his farm. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good? Right? Anything, any other, I should say, any other comments? You guys have anything else to say? Right, because what I'd like to suggest is, our next meeting is the 15th, right? I'm not, we have some attendance conflicts there. How do you guys feel about putting this back on the agenda
Yeah,
for
back on the 15th.
January 5th?
Oh, we'd like the 15th. January 5th.
I'm not
You
going
won't
to
be
be
here?
here. Mark.
Okay, we got
What do you
issues
wanna
with
do?
January 5th, too.
What do you- what-
Mark, I'm
yeah,
not gonna
what do
be
you
here
want to do?
Gotcha.
January 5th.
I mean,
I can be here, so.
We needed to work on some documents.
who's here on the 15th?
I am.
It
No.
can be. but-
Yeah, how about this,
No,
here?
no.
So we got 3.
4 out of 5
Hannah is or isn't here?
is, it's just Mr.
Dye
Dye
is
is not.
We'll come back on the 5th.
Well, because
Fifth?
we've got attendance issues on the 5th too. How do you feel about the 15th and, you
The
know,
next mid-January.
can we get, can we, does the board's view that we can get the ag and maintenance agreement in,
We have to talk about it. I
We
have a
need-
that's what
question.
tonight's for, is
Yeah,
talking
can
about
we
it.
continue to talk a little bit? You've got some other questions.
All right, I'm gonna have this on the agenda for the 15th, right?
Of
Because
December.
Of December,
Okay.
okay? So,
I have a
motion
question.
to, do I?
I have a question though. You're not ending the meeting, you just have.
No,
okay.
I don't need a motion to adjourn, so we'll just carry this over to the 15th.
Public hearing.
Okay, and, you know, look, we'll make as much progress as we can on the easement documents and
I appreciate that.
further discussion if needed.
I know Alan has sort of mentioned this a few times, the question of when farming ceases, where are we? And I think it's a good opportunity to talk about it.
I feel like
Just
literally
to-
I'm
like,
screaming
clearly.
into the wind and no one's listening. When there's going to be filed documents filed in the county clerk's office, which your counsel, has drafted 1,000,000 of them, is going to insist on, and that's going to be one of the conditions of the approval. And it's going to limit what can be on the property.
I'll just read paragraph 1 of the agricultural easement, and it says, "The use and development of the agricultural easement area will forever be restricted to some or all of the following." And then letter A. That's what he and I are going back and forth on, because he believes that everything that's included in Ag and Markets Law in 301, Section 2 should be included, and including the part that I removed.
But we did
But it does say
take out
will be forever restricted to some or all of the following. So it can only be used for farming.
So if it's not going to be actively farmed, it has to lay fallow, but it has to be put into a cover crop, and the cover crop has to be, there's something in there about every 2 months or something, it has to be
Yeah,
cut or
that's in
something.
this covenants and restrictions.
C.
So it's in
1C.
perpetuity?
Yes, the agricultural easement is in perpetuity.
And by the way, it runs to the village because that's the juridical entity that a covenant must run to. It's not, no one's trying to sidestep anything. That's why if you look at any town or any municipal ag reserve documents, they run to the town of Southampton, to the village of Southampton, because that is the juridical entity that you have to have the agreement with.
And the village would pay for the maintenance of that land once it was cover crops, whatever, but the village would take over the care and maintenance of the property? Once farming
No,
ceases?
no.
Or who would be taking that
No,
over?
no.
It can only be used for farming. If farming ceases,
Well, that's the question.
you have to, you're a party and you enforce the agreement against the next property owner.
If it's not-
They try to use it in a way that's not agricultural and it's not a farm operation, you are a party to the easement and you file an action to force compliance with the easement.
For the buyer, you're saying, for the next buyer?
Whoever the next property
The
owner
owner
that
is,
comes in and says that they don't wanna do farming there anymore, they wanna build condos there. You can enforce your agricultural easement. You are a party to it.
Well, they laughed out of the planning board. They say it's an ag reserve. It's not even a buildable lot. Remember, also, if you were to go in and ask for a single-family residence on the ag reserve, we're going to ask the health department for a permit for single-family residence. They'd pull up the subdivision. You know what they'd say? That's not a buildable lot. I mean, there's so many prohibitions in the law and in the covenants that prevent any sort of development of this at all, other than for farming. That's what it's there for. That's what it's proposed for. It's shown as an agricultural lot. You couldn't get I don't know what it's just. I guess it's one of the problems of like eating and sleeping and breathing this stuff is it's something that's so obvious to me. There's no way in hell that's going to ever be anything other than a farm. Show me show me somewhere in all this open space and agricultural stuff that's been preserved since 1980, just focusing on the ag reserve, show me somewhere that an ag reserve that's either been through the subdivision process or for acquisition from bonding from the county or the town or the village that has been ever been used for anything other than agriculture. It doesn't exist. It does not exist.
All right, thank you. Let's end the discussion on this for tonight, carry it over to the 15th, and continue the work on the documents.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have a
John,
good evening.
can you get me the other document that you had the highlight
Yes,
on?
I'll have Bailey send that to you
Okay, thank
tomorrow.
you.
Because she
And
highlighted it for me.
Okay, thank you.
Either or are going to try and get their hands on the
Oh, the
topping.
topping
Just
rose.
'cause
Yes, yes, I have it.
Love to see that. I'd like,
Yeah.
I'd like to read that. All right.
Not
So
topping rose, topping farm, I'm sorry.
December 15th then.
Thank you very much.
See you then.
Thank you.
The only other thing on the agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes from the 13th, our meeting on the 3rd and the 17th. Everybody good to go on
I
those?
think I read them.
Well, I think,
I think I read them.
I read them, but
Need to look
the
at them.
17th, the clerk said she was going to be out, and if she asked, did you get the email? And she asked that those minutes, the 17th, not be decided upon, not be voted upon until the 15th.
Okay.
I just got back from being out of the country last
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
All right.
Okay.
right when I sent them, so I wasn't gonna be able to do any edits, so if there's any
Yep.
edits.
Okay.
So we'll review
So
them.
we'll push the 17th down the agenda, or down the schedule. November 3rd, everybody good would go with those?
I think you approved those last meeting.
That's what I thought too, so,
That's
okay.
what I thought,
All right,
too.
so we're good on that one. Next meeting, December 15th at 5:30. Anyone have anything else?
I think I can make it.
All right, no other business. Motion to close our meeting tonight.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Thank you. Thank you.
Aye.